On a dreary morning, Sarah found herself standing before the grave of her late husband, David. It had been 3 long months since he had passed away unexpectedly from a heart attack, leaving her in a state of perpetual mourning. The once vibrant mornings filled with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and tender kisses on her forehead had been replaced by an oppressive silence. Nights were even worse. She would lie in her vast bed, reaching out to the cold emptiness where he used to be. Determined to confront her grief, Sarah decided to visit David's grave, clutching a bouquet of white lilies, the flowers he had always adored. As she entered the cemetery, a wave of nostalgia, anger, and sorrow tightened around her throat. Despite the medical report stating a heart attack, a part of her refused to accept that he was truly gone. Their relationship had its challenges, particularly with Ethan, their 19-year-old son, but David had always been her loyal partner, the man with whom she had shared dreams and plans. As she approached the gravestone, her legs felt weak. The inscription of his name seemed to mock her pain. Kneeling down, she placed the flowers gently and closed her eyes, allowing tears to flow freely. Memories flooded her mind. Traveling together, laughter, late-night conversations, and finally, the haunting image of his lifeless body being taken away by paramedics. "Why did you leave me?" she whispered, her voice trembling as her hands shook against the cold stone. Suddenly, a soft presence interrupted her sorrow. Sarah opened her eyes to see a young girl approaching. The child had dark skin and messy black hair tied in a bun, dressed in worn-out clothes that seemed inadequate for the chilly day. Her serious expression was striking for someone so young. Confused, Sarah furrowed her brow, but before she could speak, the girl pointed behind her and said, "Your husband wants to talk to you." Sarah's heart raced. She thought she had misheard. Swallowing hard, she turned slowly, a mix of fear and disbelief coursing through her. And then, impossibly, there he was, David, not in flesh and blood, but as a translucent figure surrounded by a soft mist, as if the air around him was distorted. His familiar features were unmistakable, but his brown eyes now held a dull, melancholic glow fixed on her. The shock was overwhelming. Sarah gasped, stumbling back, hands flying to her mouth as tears streamed down her face. "Oh my God, David! Is that you?" she stammered, her voice quaking as if the words were being forcibly pulled from her throat. David stepped forward, his expression filled with urgency and pain. He reached out, but his hand disintegrated into particles of light before it could touch her. Yet his voice was clear and strong. "My death was not natural," he said, tears brimming in his eyes. "I was murdered. I need you to uncover the truth and seek justice for me." Before she could respond, his image began to fade. In an instant, he was gone, leaving only the cold air in his place. Sarah collapsed to her knees, overwhelmed, burying her face in her hands as waves of grief crashed over her. She remained there, sobbing uncontrollably, her body shaking with the release of 3 months' worth of pent-up sorrow. As she knelt on the damp grass, the girl stood silently beside her, a sentinel in the cold morning. "How did you know?" Sarah managed to ask, her voice choked with emotion. The girl stepped closer, her calm demeanor unsettling for someone so young. "I just feel these things. I see what others cannot," she replied softly, her gaze piercing through Sarah's soul. Sarah looked around, searching for an adult who might be responsible for the child, but the cemetery was empty. "Camila," the girl introduced herself, unwavering in her gaze. "Your husband did not die as they said. He is trapped between 2 worlds. He cannot rest until he receives justice." The weight of Camila's words crashed down on Sarah, a mix of disbelief and desperation flooding her. "This is madness," she murmured, grappling with the reality of her grief and the urgent need to uncover the truth. Yet, somehow, she found herself nodding, as if a greater force was guiding her decisions. "But I don't even know where to start," she whispered, her heart racing again. Camila stood up, adjusting her worn coat, and extended her hand to help Sarah rise. The simple, almost maternal gesture sent a chill down Sarah's spine. "I will help you, but you must trust me completely," Camila said, her voice steady. Sarah hesitated for a moment, but then took a deep breath and grasped the girl's hand tightly. Returned to mansion, Sarah felt as if she were walking through a minefield. Every corner of the house felt different, as if David were still there, watching, trying to communicate. The portrait of him in the foyer seemed more intense, his painted gaze urging her to uncover the truth. That night, as silence enveloped the halls, Sarah struggled to sleep, clutching a pillow to her chest while David's words echoed in her mind. I was murdered. Seek justice for me. The next morning, before breakfast, Camilla appeared at the mansion's door, as if she knew Sarah would be awake, restless with anticipation. We need to start in his study, she said, pointing upstairs. Sarah hesitated, fear gripping her, but the girl's confident voice held a strange power over her. Am I really ready for this? She questioned internally as she followed Camilla up the stairs. When they entered the study, a cold draft swept through the room, rustling papers on the desk. Sarah instinctively covered her mouth, trying to suppress the rising panic. Camilla entered first, her eyes scanning the room as if she knew exactly what to look for. Sarah approached the desk, opening drawers and rifling through old folders. With each paper she touched, painful memories of David surfaced. Contracts, documents, letters. Small clues that began to form a dark picture. Hours passed, and as the clock struck 2 in the morning, Sarah, her eyes burning from exhaustion, decided to open the last drawer of David's desk. The mansion was silent, save for the sound of paper rustling and her racing heartbeat. Camilla sat on the floor beside the desk, watching her intently. Are you sure you want to continue? She asked, genuine concern etched on her young face. Taking a deep breath, Sarah replied, I need to do this. I can't stop now. It was then that she noticed a peculiar space in the wall behind the bookshelf, a subtle difference in the wood that would have gone unnoticed by distracted eyes. Heart pounding, she stood up and, with trembling hands, pushed against the side of the bookshelf. The wood creaked slightly, and suddenly, a hidden compartment revealed itself, containing an old safe, the very one David had always claimed was for work documents but had never shown her. Damn it, she murmured, pressing her forehead against her hand, trying to contain the flood of thoughts. As she searched for the combination, she couldn't help but think of how many times David had entered that study late at night, claiming he had work to finish. Was this where he hid his greatest secrets? Anxiety and fear consumed her. If I can't open it, we'll have to call a locksmith tomorrow, she said, already considering her options. But as she turned the dials for the third time, the safe clicked open. Her heart raced as she opened the door, revealing a single envelope sealed with her name written in David's unmistakable handwriting. Sarah swallowed hard, standing frozen for a moment, staring at the envelope as if it were a ticking bomb. Camilla approached, placing her small hand on Sarah's shoulder. Maybe this is what he wanted you to find, she said, her eyes shining with a wisdom beyond her years. Nodding, Sarah took the envelope to the table and, with trembling fingers, broke the seal. As she read each line, a wave of emotions crashed over her. David had drafted a new will, a will of which she had never known. In it, he explicitly stated that Ethan was to be disinherited, citing a lack of trust in his son's character and decisions. No, this can't be, Sarah gasped, feeling her legs weaken. The document continued, revealing that David had intended to formalize this will in the coming days, but had run out of time. Did someone know about this document? Could it be related to what happened to him? Questions swirled in her mind like a hurricane. Camilla, sensing Sarah's despair, leaned closer. Now you know where to start, Sarah. It's time to ask Ethan what he knows. For a moment, Sarah closed her eyes, trying to organize the whirlwind of emotions within her. Pain, shock, and anger all mixed together. She recalled the last arguments between father and son, the veiled threats Ethan had made when David tried to set boundaries, the cold, harsh words exchanged, and the slamming of doors. Everything began to make a painful sense. It can't be my son, she whispered, her voice breaking. With heavy steps, Sarah descended the stairs, clutching the will as if it were a bomb ready to explode. Her heart pounded, so hard it felt like it would echo through the mansion. She paused in the foyer, taking a deep breath to steady her trembling legs. I have to be strong. I need to know the truth, she repeated to herself like a mantra. Camilla watched silently from the staircase, her firm, mature gaze encouraging Sarah to take the next step. Sarah entered the main living room, where the dim light from a table lamp cast shadows on the walls. She found Ethan sprawled on the sofa, legs crossed, earbuds hanging around his neck, eyes glued to his phone. He seemed oblivious to everything around him, wearing wrinkled clothes and deep dark circles under his eyes, a sign of sleepless nights. When he noticed her presence, he looked up with impatience. "What now, Mom? Another lecture?" he asked, waving his phone dismissively. Swallowing the lump in her throat, Sarah steadied her voice. "We need to talk. Now." He raised an eyebrow, skepticism written all over his face. "About what?" he asked, still smirking. Sarah approached slowly, opened a folder, and placed the will on the coffee table, making sure he could see it clearly. "About this and about your father's death." Ethan's smile vanished instantly, replaced by a mix of surprise and irritation. "What kind of joke is this?" he shot back, rising from the sofa with clenched fists. Sarah stood her ground, her gaze unwavering. "This is not a joke, Ethan. I found the new will. Your father had decided to cut you out of the inheritance, and he died before he could register officially." For several seconds, silence enveloped the room. Ethan appeared frozen, his eyes fixed on the document, his jaw tense, and his breath quickening. "This is ridiculous," he muttered, running a hand through his hair nervously. "You know how he was always playing games, making threats. This doesn't mean anything." His voice grew louder, more defensive. Taking a deep breath, Sarah felt her anger and disappointment swell within her like a tidal wave. "Don't lie to me, Ethan. Not now," she said, tears brimming in her eyes. "I want to know the truth. What happened that night?" His laughter was dry and forced, almost desperate. He walked over to the bar, poured himself a glass of whiskey, and downed it in one gulp. "Are you really accusing me of something like this?" "Your own son," he shouted, his voice oscillating between irony and rage. Sarah stepped closer, her heart aching. "You are my son, but I need to hear it from you. What happened that night?" she yelled, unable to contain her emotions any longer. Ethan's face flushed red as he hurled the empty glass against the wall, shattering it into countless pieces. "He wanted to take everything from me. Everything," he screamed, his eyes wild as he advanced toward her. "He said I was a disgrace to the family, that I didn't deserve a cent." The words dripped with venom, and Sarah's heart sank. "Then it was you," she whispered, horror creeping into her voice. "You did this. You killed your own father." The confession hit her like a knife to the chest. It was the only way. Ethan shouted, veins bulging in his neck. He was going to take everything away from me, and I couldn't let that happen. Sarah's world spun as she struggled to comprehend the reality of her son's actions. The child she had nurtured, the boy she had held in her arms, was now confessing to having poisoned his own father. She clutched her chest, fighting for breath as despair washed over her. "I have to call the police," she murmured, more to herself than to him, taking a step toward the phone. But before she could finish her thought, Ethan's eyes darkened, and he lunged for a drawer in the nearby cabinet. Sarah barely had time to react as she turned to face him, seeing him brandishing a gun, pointing it directly at her. "You're not going to do that, Mom," he said, his voice low and threatening. "I've already lost everything. Do you really think I'm going to let you ruin what little I have left?" Panic surged through Sarah, and she felt her legs weaken, needing to brace herself against the table to avoid collapsing. Terror gripped her, and her heart raced as she realized the gravity of the situation. "Ethan, for God's sake," she pleaded, tears streaming down her face. "I'm your mother. I love you. You don't have to do this. There's still time to fix things." But he was beyond reason, a wall of hatred and fear blocking any trace of humanity. Sarah's eyes darted around the room, searching for an escape, but the living room felt like a labyrinth with no exits. One wrong move, and it could all end right there. In that moment of desperation, Camilla appeared as if she had calculated the perfect moment to intervene. The girl rushed into the room, her eyes blazing with fury. Without hesitation, she charged at Ethan, leaping onto him and striking the arm that held the gun with surprising strength for her age. The weapon clattered to the floor with a metallic thud. Sarah screamed, covering her mouth in shock as Ethan stumbled back, momentarily stunned. Camilla quickly pushed him to the ground, pinning him with a firm grip on his shoulder while using her knees to keep him immobilized. "Now, Sarah, call the police!" she shouted with an authority that left no room for Ugaina days. Sarah rushed to the phone, her fingers trembling as she dialed the emergency number. Please send a patrol immediately. My son tried to kill me. He confessed to murdering his father, she cried, her voice shaking as she relayed the details. As she hung up, she knelt beside Camila, her hands covering her face, the tears flowing freely now, a mix of relief and despair. Ethan, still pinned down, continued to shout and curse, spewing hatred toward his mother. You ruined my life, he screamed, thrashing against Camila's hold. The sound of sirens pierced the silence of the night, growing louder as they approached. The flashing red and blue lights illuminated the mansion, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Officers rushed into the house, armed and ready. As Sarah remained on her knees, feeling utterly drained, one of the officers quickly subdued Ethan, cuffing him as another collected the fallen gun. Don't worry, ma'am. He won't hurt anyone else, one of the officers assured her, helping her to her feet. Ethan, now restrained, continued to shout, this is all her fault. She brainwashed you. Sarah felt a sharp pang of pain at his words, watching as her son was led away, still screaming and thrashing like a wounded animal. She felt a mix of sorrow and disbelief wash over her. The boy she had raised was now being taken away as a murderer. As the door closed behind Ethan, the silence returned to the mansion, heavy and suffocating. Sarah sank to the floor, hugging her knees, her body racked with sobs. Camila, still catching her breath, sat beside her, offering silent support. Thank you, Sarah whispered, her voice hoarse. You saved my life. Camila wrapped her arms around Sarah, holding her tightly as the weight of the night settled around them. The following morning, the sky appeared clearer, as if the terror of the night had washed away the darkness that had lingered over the house. Sarah, however, still felt exhausted, her body drained from the emotional turmoil. Yet, as she looked at Camila, who sat beside her on the terrace, she knew there was one last thing she needed to do. Return to the cemetery, to the place where it all began. Driving through the city streets with Camila beside her, Sarah's hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, her knuckles white. Her mind raced with questions. Would David still be there? Would he know that the truth had finally come to light? Would he forgive her for taking so long? Camila remained quiet during the drive, casting occasional glances at Sarah, respecting her moment of grief and anticipation. When they arrived at the cemetery, Sarah stepped out of the car, each step toward David's grave feeling like an eternity. The crunch of dry leaves underfoot and the scent of damp earth filled her senses, bringing back memories of the previous day. Finally, she stood before David's gravestone, her legs trembling. Kneeling slowly, she placed her trembling hands on the cold marble, as if trying to feel any trace of his presence. I did what you asked, she whispered, her voice breaking as tears streamed down her face. It was our son, Ethan. The words barely escaped her lips as she fought to maintain control. I never imagined this could happen. She closed her eyes tightly, wishing to alleviate the weight of that truth. But I fulfilled your request. Justice has been served. In that moment, a gentle breeze swept through the cemetery, and Sarah opened her eyes to see a soft light beginning to take shape. The air shimmered, distorting slightly until David's figure emerged once more. But this time, he looked different. There was a glow around him, a serenity that had been absent before. Sarah, he said, his voice deep yet soothing. I know. I saw everything. I heard every word. His eyes, now shimmering with ethereal light, filled with tears. I never imagined our son could do something like this. The pain in his voice pierced Sarah's heart, and she reached out, wanted to touch him, but her fingers passed through him as if he were made of air. I'm so sorry, she cried, her face wet with tears. I should have seen it. I should have done something. David shook his head, his expression tender. You did what you could. You gave me what I needed, peace. A bittersweet smile crossed his face, and the breeze intensified, wrapping around Sarah like a warm embrace. Camila stood to the side, observing the exchange with a calm demeanor, her hands clasped in front of her. David cast one last glance at Sarah, his brown eyes reflecting gratitude. Take care of yourself, and take care of him. He is still your son, he said, his voice growing fainter with each word. A bright light enveloped him, and slowly he began to fade away, ascending like a mist into the clear blue sky. Sarah knelt there for several minutes, gazing upward, allowing the cool wind to dry her tears. A strange sense of peace washed over her. As if a cycle had finally closed beside her, Camila approached, placing a gentle hand on Sarah's shoulder. "Now he can rest," she said softly. Those words resonated deeply within Sarah, and she closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. She knew that this encounter had been necessary, a final farewell that would allow her to move forward. After a long moment, Sarah rose to her feet, feeling the weight of the world lift slightly from her shoulders. She turned to Camila, who stood with a serene expression, and without thinking, she enveloped the girl in a tight embrace. It was a hug filled with gratitude, relief, and a genuine affection that had blossomed unexpectedly. "I can't thank you enough," Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. "You saved my life, and in a way, you saved his soul." Camila held her tightly, and after a moment, they separated. "You don't have to thank me, Sarah," she replied with a shy smile. "I just did what was right." For a brief moment, they shared a silence filled with understanding. Sarah took a deep breath, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. "But why? Why did you get so involved? Why did you help me when even my own family didn't?" she asked, her voice softer now, filled with curiosity. Camila lowered her gaze for a moment, as if choosing her words carefully. "9 months ago, I was very sick. I had leukemia," she said, her voice trembling slightly. The revelation hit Sarah like a thunderbolt, her eyes widening in shock. "No, it can't be," she whispered, covering her mouth in disbelief. Camila nodded, a bittersweet smile on her face. "I was hospitalized for weeks. The doctors said I didn't have much time left. Then a man with brown eyes and a sad smile came to the hospital. He paid for all my treatment and disappeared before I could thank him." Tears filled Sarah's eyes again, but this time they were tears of gratitude. That was David, she realized, her heart swelling with emotion. Camila smiled softly, her eyes glistening. "Yes, it was him. After I learned he had passed, I promised myself that somehow, one day, I would repay him for what he did for me." Overwhelmed, Sarah knelt before Camila, taking the girl's small hands in her own. "You have no idea what this means to me," she said, her voice shaking. "David was a good man, and now, thanks to you, he can finally rest in peace." Camila smiled, her expression radiating warmth and kindness. "I just did what anyone with a heart would do," she replied, her voice steady and sincere. Sarah embraced her once more, holding the girl tightly as if to freeze that moment in time. In that cemetery, under the morning sun, a bond was forged, one that transcended the chaos and was strengthened by love and gratitude. In the days that followed, Sarah found herself in a state of reflection. The mansion, once filled with shadows of pain and suffocating memories, began to transform. She spent hours on the terrace, contemplating everything that had transpired, the words of Camila and David's final farewell point one afternoon. While soaring through old papers in David's study, Sarah stumbled upon a folder filled with drafts of social projects he had dreamed of implementing. Ideas for community schools, health centers, and donations that had never come to fruition. A knot formed in her throat. "I have to do this," she murmured, tears brimming in her eyes. "For you and for all the people who need it." With newfound determination, she picked up the phone and began making calls, reaching out to lawyers, consultants, and even some trusted old friends. The family's wealth would now serve a new purpose. The first few weeks were a whirlwind of organization as Sarah visited marginalized communities, witnessing firsthand the struggles of families living with far less than she had ever imagined. In every child's face, she saw a reflection of Camila, and in every child, she recognized the opportunity to change lives, just as David had once done. She founded an institution to support children in vulnerable situations, providing food, education, and medical care. For the first time in months, Sarah felt a sense of purpose, as if each tear shed was nurturing something greater, something that was beginning to bloom. One Saturday afternoon, a grand charity event was organized in City Park. The sun bathed the trees in golden light, and the sound of children's laughter filled the air. Sarah walked among the activity tents, observing dozens of children playing, running, eating popcorn, and receiving gifts. She smiled, her eyes sparkling with joy as she watched a little girl with braids receive a new pair of shoes, hugging the volunteer who handed them to her. For a moment, she paused, inhaling deeply, allowing a single tear to roll down her cheek. "David, wherever you are, I hope you can see this," she whispered, looking up at the sky. Camila, who had been by her side throughout the event, squeezed her hand gently. Dressed in a simple dress, she radiated joy, her eyes sparkling as she watched the children. "Today is a beautiful day, isn't it?" she said, her wide smile infectious. "It's more than beautiful. It's a new beginning," Sarah replied, her voice filled with hope as the event continued. Sarah discreetly climbed onto a small makeshift stage to give a brief speech of gratitude to the volunteers and families present. Looking at the children, those lives now filled with new opportunities, she smiled brightly. "I've lost so much in the past few months, more than I can put into words. But I've also gained something I never thought I would, a new purpose. Today, I understand that David's true legacy was not the fortune he left behind, but the ability to transform lives with love and solidarity." Camila, amidst the audience, beamed with pride, nodding as if to say, "I already knew that." After stepping down from the stage, Sarah walked toward Camila, embracing her tightly once more, enveloped in the sound of laughter surrounding them. As the sunset painted the sky in shades of orange, they stood together, ready to embrace a new chapter, a story of rebirth, healing, and hope. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. Leave a like to support us and activate notifications so you won't miss any updates. Your support helps us continue creating the best for you. Until next time.